So proud to be part of this amazing, bustling city of gold. Come behind the scenes with us as we explore what really goes into the development, refurbishment and creation of this incredible city we call home. From past to present, we look at what makes Josie unique and what the future holds.
BuildAid on Mix 93.8 FM. Good evening. This evening we're going to be chatting about architecture, our favorite subject. We're also going to be talking about our favorite city, Joburg, and our Facebook page, Building Joburg on Mix. In the studio with me, as usual, Simon on the desk, and Kay. What's happening?
Well, tonight we're also looking for a park. It's a place where you can feed the ducks, row a boat, picnic, walk, cycle, and get up to no good. It's a very easy question, and I'll give you a little bit of a history of it as we go along. It is in Josie. If you know which park we're talking about, you could answer our question by SMSing 41348, and you could win a bottle of wine and a great book on renovating your home.
My guest this evening, Janet Saaiman. Janet's an architect. She's also very involved with GIFA. That's a Gauteng Institute for Architecture in its marketing and education programs. We also have two young men that are going to chat to us briefly, Christopher Cretney and Sebastian Johanson. These are two young students that are looking at architecture as a profession. This is BuildAid on Mix. My name's Graham Alexander. The show's brought to you by AfriSam. My guest this evening is Janet Saaiman. We're also going to be chatting to a couple of young guys about their future profession. Janet, thanks so much for coming to chat to us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Janet, you're very involved with GIFA. You also were a lecturer at UJ. You're also a practicing architect. So you're the perfect person to talk about our subject tonight, which is how does one get into architecture as a youngster? But firstly, Janet, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you're involved at GIFA.
I'm part of the education committee at GIFA, so we try to promote architecture to scholars, to students, and then also assist the public and architects, with their future CPD points and stuff like that.
CPD points. So most architectural professionals go, what? Yeah, it's on the subject of CPD points. Now, just so everyone understands what we're talking about, this is, what does CPD stand for, firstly?
It's continuing professional development. So
like most professionals, Janet, you need to keep in touch with what's going on, and architecture is not different.
Yes, it is by law. We have to all do it. I think it's good. We sometimes it's a bit difficult to find interesting events to actually get your CPD points, but I always say there's so much that you can do and so many things that you can learn that it shouldn't be a problem to get your CPD points that you need.
It should be just a next step, really.
Yeah.
Rather than a pain.
Yeah, it's actually not as bad as people think. It is because we're all constantly learning and researching and looking at new things, so it's actually not such a big deal.
Janet, a lot of people look at architecture as a career and link a long period of time to the study, and sometimes it's a bit of a misconception, that it does take a long time. I believe that the different courses that are available through universities and technicons and so on have changed a little bit. What is the new format, just as an overview?
It was especially, referring to UJ. UJ had a diploma in architecture, and then you could study for a BTech, and then an MTech, or go to WITS or to UCT, one of those that did an MArch. But they also now have a twin stream, which is a bachelor in architectural studies for 3 years, and then then you go on to an honors or a master's. I think they just have a 2-year master's program. I don't think they do the honors, where at WITS it's an honors and a master's. So it is broken up so that you have a step in between where you can get out if you feel that you would rather want to do something else. So you have a basic bachelor's, and then you can go and do masters in something else if you're interested.
So that makes a lot more sense. And maybe we'll bounce it off the youngsters later and see if it makes sense to them. BuildAid on Mix. My name's Graham Alexander, chatting to Janet Saaiman. We're also chatting as a team here, including Simon and our other young man, Sebastian Johanson, who's chosen architecture as a career. Sebastian, thanks for coming to chat to us.
Thanks for having me.
And listen to what we're saying, and then we're going to get a chirp from you in a sec. We were chatting about Herbert Baker and the number of projects that this guy did. Over a period of 20 years, he did 40 significant buildings, including the Union buildings in Pretoria. And that's a serious building. And he did 2 of these a year. Some of the older buildings, Groteskia and Rondebosch, or Rondebosch, should we say, it's under the mountain. Is it Bosch or Bosch?
I don't know. Who cares?
Simon, you mentioned some of the schools. Just run through them. It's quite phenomenal.
Okay, so we got Rodin School in Johannesburg, Rhodes University, obviously, which I suppose we would classify as a school as well in Grahamstown. We've got Bishop's Diocese. I never know how to pronounce that word.
It's the Bishop's in the Rondebosch.
Yeah, in the Rondebosch. St. Andrew's College, St. Andrew's School for Girls, St. Anne's College Chapel in Pietermaritzburg, St. John's College, and St. John's is a beautiful example of his architecture. Yeah.
Jeppe, Germiston, Michael House, unbelievable.
Grey College, I mean, the list definitely goes on and on and on.
If you look back at architecture, and you'll know this better than I do, Janet, that the architect wasn't just the guy that did the drawings. He was there on site making sure things that were put up, and it was work in progress. And I guess in that era, they were very reliant on top craftsmen and contractors to interpret what the architect was trying to do.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and I think there's unfortunately not that many craftsmen left. So when you are working on heritage buildings, it might be a bit of a problem to match things that's got to be restored. And, there's only a couple of people that can do it.
Sebastian, you've made a decision to get into architecture in a couple of years. Give us some of the reasoning behind that.
Well, as a child, I always enjoyed building things, coming up with my own ideas, being able to correct other things that people have made. I would look at a building or I'd look at a car and I'd say, hey, I don't think that's good. I would prefer to do it this way. So then I think architecture would be a way to put my ideas into the world and to show everyone the way that I would put things.
That creativity, I think, drives a lot of architects and a lot of creative people. But I guess it also takes a lot of collaboration, working with other minds, other creativity, and other technologies. Find that is an exciting prospect?
I think that's great because everyone can contribute everything that they think. And there's new ideas all the time. There's new ways to do things. And if you have one person who's been doing one thing the same way for years, then to be able to get someone else in and change that way of doing things is a really good idea.
Looking at, again, Herbert Baker, Sir Herbert Baker, that designed so many buildings, and some of them are truly iconic, in such a short period of time. This guy put his head down and got down to work, which is sometimes out of that creative space. You design something, someone's got to draw it, someone's got to go talk to the contractor. So there's some hard work involved, Simon.
You know what I found about the Baker designs is that the simplicity of the designs and the clipping together of the building is paramount in all these designs. It's the classical style at which it's all clipped together, and he must have relied very, very heavily on site craftsmen, because when you have a look at those old drawings, there's no way that you could actually build a building of that nature. Like Rock Ridge Road, his own personal dwelling. You can't build that from the drawings that I've seen, and it was definitely an on-site, hands-on approach, without a question.
Yeah. My name's Graham Alexander. I'm chatting to Janet Saaiman, and Simon has joined the conversation. Simon doesn't only look after the desk here every week, he's part of our team, but he's also an architect. So he's the ideal person to pull into this conversation. But we're also chatting to Christopher, or we're going to be chatting to him shortly, about why he has chosen architecture as a career. Let's bring Herbert Baker back into this discussion. Now, I think we all agree that colonialism is not a good concept. So let's get that out of the way before we go anywhere. But when you look at these buildings and the era of Lord Milner, it unfortunately in history was colonialism. But a number of buildings were designed by Sir Herbert Baker. And just to bring the Joburg concept into it, Simon, how many of them were schools?
Sure, Graham. I think there were 12 schools, but in fact, I think there are a couple more on this that's not on the list. I know, for example, that Herbert Baker was involved in the drawings of, or the design of Brakpan High School, which I went to, and I know that that's not on this list. It's a classic Herbert Baker building. I don't think it's designed specifically by him. It might have been by somebody freelancing in his office, which is quite possible.
Well, I guess this guy, or this architect, Janet, must have had a whole lot of draftsmen working for him, because it was prolific. He did 40 significant buildings in 20 years. That's 2 a year.
Yeah, no, I'm sure that he must have had quite a lot of help. And there's often, when you do research for a heritage house, that it would say that it's from Herbert Baker's office, not specifically him. Himself.
Yeah. So, like any architectural practice, you have your chief architect, but he does have a lot of people helping out.
Yeah.
Graham, we were talking earlier on, and Janet said that architecture becomes your life, and you can kiss your holidays goodbye. Herbert Baker was a classic example of that. I mean, he came here in 1892 to visit his brother, and stayed for 20 years drawing. So, I mean,
he liked it.
I don't know if he liked it or if he was just shoehorned into the profession of designing buildings. So, yeah.
So it's one of our guests this evening is Christopher Cretney. Christopher, thanks so much for coming to chat to us.
No problem.
Now you're listening to all this background, and you're going to kiss your holidays goodbye or whatever. Are you still convinced?
Kind of. I went for a career assessment not too long ago, and he suggested lots of things like film and TV study and lots of things to do with like design and being creative. And architecture for me is doing that on like a large scale. It's almost like the ultimate version of creating something in your own style that has your own sort of twist on it.
How much do students like yourselves get exposed to with regard to careers, and we're talking about architecture, while you're at school? Do you rely on your parents, or how do you get this information?
Well, quite a lot from my parents, because my dad's an architect, and also at school right now we're doing job shadowing, which is why I'm doing architecture right now.
I think it's a good call. Don't go away, Christopher. We're chatting about Herbert Baker, and if there's anything you want to just chuck in and think we're talking nonsense or something, just say that. Do you think it's a paying career, or does that not matter?
It doesn't really matter, as long as you get to do your own sort of thing, as long as you enjoy what you're doing.
So it's something I wanted to mention or discuss with Janet. Maybe it's the time now, and Simon can also have something to say, is when you go out as a professional, you've finished your 3 years or 4 years or your master's degree, how savvy are you in running a business, particularly if you want to run your own practice?
No, I don't think you have it in you. I think you have to first work in an office so that you can see how it works. So that work experience is very, very important. And when I was a student, I worked every single holiday in an office. So by the time I graduated, I could do everything. So it was very nice walking into quite a nice job. Because that's where you learn the skills. The university is much more theoretical. So somewhere along the line, you have to pick up the skills to back up your work.
Yeah. Simon, you run a practice. So there's the good stuff, the architecture, but you also got to chase debt, find clients, pay the rent.
Yeah, look, that segment is always a bit of a grind. And I think even though I lecture office practice at UJ and we try and teach everybody about how to run a business, there is nothing like work experience. It is completely and utterly invaluable. And I can't stress that enough. And the old system where you would work in every holiday, every free minute that you were in an office of something and you were learning those elements as you went along. Hell, you actually can't you can't get that anymore. So you come out of varsity and you have this huge theoretical based background, and now you've got to practically apply it, and that's quite a difficult process. Yeah.
So Christopher, Janet mentioned earlier that as an architect, while you're studying, you need to do other studies on your own. So maybe it's a good idea as students to study business as well as architecture, so that when you come out and you want to be in your own practice, you know how to do it. My dentist said he wished he had done a BCom when he was finished his degree.
Yeah, I think any career can benefit from a bit of business knowledge. And I mean, if you just see the accounts that's sent out by whoever, it's like these days nobody can send out a proper account. It's like, please.
Christopher, the business concept, what's your feeling on that? You've picked a career like architecture, or is it something you haven't really thought through?
Well, I actually absolutely hate business as a subject. I'm useless at it. I can't focus in class. I think it's really boring. So I'm really not interested with that.
Okay. It's something you're going to bump into, I think, Chris? And by the way, that wasn't somebody's cell phone.
It's the front
doorbell. Radio stations shouldn't have front doorbells that sound like that. We're taking a short break.
No, hang on a sec, Graham. Before we do that, I just want to mention when you touched on business, you were identifying that it is quite critical, and the business that they teach at school is actually quite a complicated process, and they give quite a theoretical background to the whole thing. But once again, I'm going to stress practical experience. So all those guys that I teach, and I say, okay, what are you doing next year? Half of them put their hands up. No, we're going to run our own practices. Don't. Get into the field, do a little bit of architecture, get to know what you've got to do and what you don't have to do, and then roll it from there.
Janet, we're going to have you back on the show and maybe explore that a little bit more on how technology has moved. I mean, I know you started out as an architect with software like Caddy and so on, and Caddy's still going. Funny enough, we use it on some of our projects, and then you've got programs like Revit and so on that are sort of light years beyond where we were 20 years ago. But we'll come back and chat about that on another date. We run a Facebook page called Building Joburg on Mix. Now, all the stuff we talk about, like Herbert Baker and these buildings, these pictures will be on the Facebook page tomorrow, and you can look at things like his home, Stonehouse, which he designed his own home here in Johannesburg. Some pictures of that. Okay, who's the winner?
Well, a quick note from Jenny. She said her uncle and his neighbour lived in Oranje in Cape Town, and their houses were designed by Herbert Baker, and they were mirror copies of each other. So maybe he did cheat just a little bit sometimes. The winner tonight is Gian, and the answer to the question was Zoo Lake, of course. So well done to everyone who got it right.
There we go. Mixed listeners, the brightest guys on the planet. Thanks to my guest, Janet Saaiman. Thanks also to Christopher Cretney and Sebastian Johanson for sharing their dream with us. And to the guys in the studio, Simon, Kay, and Ian. And to all of you out there, thanks so much for listening. We do this every week between 6 and 7. Chat you next week. Ciao.
But there's something online, and I can't hurt you bad. There must be so much love in my heart that it would tear me apart. And I know, although you couldn't see